The world of work provides freedom and liberty for people with disabilities especially. And we can never forget that employers are always going to need employees. They're always going to have certain skills filled in their jobs. They can't outsource everything and they can't offshore everything unless they want to do a different kind of business. So I hope that people with disabilities keep in mind that they need to be in front of the employer at all times. They need to be diligent, they need to be vigilant, they need to be circulating their skills and improving their skills constantly. But it's going to be a long, hard haul until we get out of the economic depression that we're in, so to speak, and we really start looking at the growth of the employment sector. But there will still be jobs to be filled, and I hope people with disabilities will be the answer to a lot of employment issues. Employers need a steady supply of reliable workers, and they need sources for workers. And what they're looking for is a relationship that responds to their needs. Oftentimes, providers, school districts, others who are trying to work with people with disabilities and getting them jobs don't pick up the pace of what business expects, and business wants reliable, fast, responsive partners. So one relationship to develop is one where you are quick on the spot, quick to get somebody there. If they call up and say, I need a receptionist by 4 o'clock this afternoon, you got to respond. If that's not the case, then they're not going to call you back, and that's just one of the realities of the pacing of business. Another would be to ask the business community to be an advisor and a supporter so that the training programs, the educational experiences, and the connections between school and work or providers and work are meaningful and that they're relevant to the business community. If the business community is asked for input, they will provide the input that they need. So engaging them very subtly but very meaningfully in a number of different ways will engage them in accomplishing the mission. The skill sets needed by employers continues to go up, no question, but there are still basic jobs, entry-level jobs that are always going to be filled and always going to be needed to be filled. So I wouldn't say that employers have decided that they're only going to take PhDs in bioengineering and that's all they're looking for today. They're looking for a variety of skills and they'll always have turnover. We're affected by the flow of the economy, by the immigration laws that we experience, by a number of factors, the aging of our workforce. And those vacancies are going to come at various levels within an employment setting. So it's not easy to predict where those openings are going to happen, where the vacancies are going to occur, but hopefully there'll be a ready supply of qualified people at all levels to fill those vacancies. Volunteering is a very effective way to learn skills and develop relationships sort of in an unpaid workforce way. But if it becomes an end-all, be-all, that's really not what's going to contribute to someone's ability to get a job. It will be a starting point. It will be a wonderful way to learn. It will be a wonderful way to develop relationships with employers. But I think the expectation should be that I'm using this as unpaid work so that it will lead to work opportunities. And if that progression, that ability to move up into a paid work experience is the purpose of the volunteering, then I think it's great. In and of itself, I think community service is a great and noble act, and I wouldn't take anything away from it. But for those folks who are having very difficult times finding real work opportunities, volunteering with the objective of work is effective. The United States Business Leadership Network, the USBLN, is a nationwide organization with 57 affiliates, and through those affiliates connects with about 5,000 employers nationwide. This is a wonderful network that is already interested in employing people with disabilities, learning how to better market to people with disabilities, and now providing vendoring opportunities for employers who want to vendor with disability-owned business enterprises. The USBLN is certifying these disability-owned businesses so that they can sell upwards their products and services and really grow the economic independence of people with disabilities. The second wave of any disability rights movement is usually economic empowerment. And getting jobs is one way, but owning your own business is certainly very Americanish, and we hope that we're promoting that through the USBLN. The BLN movement is moving internationally. We have 3 affiliates now created in Canada, and I just came back from China where we talked to the American Chamber of Commerce there about developing a business leadership network there. So we think that the BLN movement, an employer-to-employer network where employers can get together and talk about challenges, issues, opportunities, anything that will help them find and hire and promote people with disabilities, do a better job of marketing, and then including people with disabilities as vendors. That is really the future. Employers are seeking a reliable, strong, trustworthy workforce. And they're also now very interested in making sure that their employees look like their customers and now look like their vendors. So if the community is made up of 20% people with disabilities, their workforce should reflect those kinds of numbers, and it should be representative of the very diverse population of people with disabilities in the workplace. We're also finding that companies who hire people with disabilities project a very positive image to consumers generally, and that there's high acceptability and respect for the companies. So there's brand loyalty, there's company loyalty by customers who engage with such employers who are caring about and employing people with disabilities. But no doubt, employers are looking for a strong, reliable workforce. Turnover costs them a lot of money. So if they find a good worker and they maximize the skills that that individual has and the contributions that that person can make, and move that person up based on their ability to be productive and reliable and helpful, you're helping the company very much that way. The goal that a company develops in its diversity and inclusion program is really a long-term view. And it takes a lot of commitment on the part of the C-level folks in a company, the chief executive officer, the chief operating officer, all the C-level folks, that they buy in across the board in that they're going to include people with disabilities in their diversity and inclusion programs, that they're accountable for what they're doing. Are they hiring people with disabilities? Are they looking for and recruiting for people with disabilities in Longview, among other diverse populations? And then are they including people with disabilities in all aspects of the company, including advancement opportunities? This is the long view, and this is where I think the challenge is today is, while you might have a chief diversity officer that says, I get it, people with disabilities have to be included, and not just the superstar, brilliant disabled people, but people with a variety of disabilities are really wanted and needed to be represented in our company. That challenge has to be spread across the other C-level divisions of the company, and it has to be supported by probably the board of directors and the chief executive officer. Without that kind of top-down support, you get very indifferent approaches. You get some companies that buy it and get it and understand it and thrive with it, and you'll get other companies who don't understand why they're doing it, and they don't do very well at it. And it usually ends up reflecting badly on the company. When companies decide that they're going to move in the area of including people with disabilities fully, and there's usually a champion within the company that accepts this and takes up this mantle and starts talking about it and promoting it, and they probably have a family member that has a disability and it's very personal to them, but they become evangelists for the disability movement. You see it sort of as if they invented sliced bread, and they get so excited about it, and yet some of us who've been working in this thing think, well, that's great, go for it. We want you to be happy and proud of it. But there are a lot of people out there that are talking about it and doing it. And I smile and I think, I'm so glad that they got the energy. I'm so glad that they found the passion for it. I wish them well, and we'll try to offer them ideas and techniques on making sure that they can sustain this. Because if it's not sustainable after that person leaves that chief, whatever job that person's in, the manager, the director level, and everybody below them is included, then they haven't done a good job. So the sustainability of a program like this is really the goal. Take the cheerleader, take the person who really understands it and the why, and really embed that into the culture of the company, and so that if that person leaves that position, the next person says, I am fully accountable for making sure that this program works, and that includes people with disabilities. The most fundamental success factor, I think, is having one person with a disability doing a good job, performing well. That person, by his or her presence, is the driving factor in the success of other people following. We can do a lot of disability awareness training. We can talk about cultural inclusion and disability culture, and we can talk about the whys and And we can even use the compliance aspect. If you don't, you're going to be jeopardizing your federal contracting, or you're violating ADA or state law. You can hammer people over the head, but nothing sells better than the success of a person with a disability, and spreads that externally, outwards from themselves. They're the ambassadors. They take on this responsibility. They hardly know that they're charged with this responsibility to carry out this mission, but really the success is by employing people. How do people get comfortable with people with disabilities? By the mere presence, being in the presence of people with disabilities. How do schools develop really good inclusion programs? It's by getting kids with disabilities sitting side by side with other kids with disabilities and understanding that there's very little difference between kids with disabilities and kids without disabilities. Same in the workplace, same everywhere. Over the past 10 years, there's been a remarkable acceptance and elevation of the status of people with disabilities culturally in the United States and globally. I mean, we now live with a UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. It's just almost unbelievable, frankly, to see this happen on a global basis. The fact that the United States was the 141st country to sign the convention was really a statement about we'd lost our leadership, and now we're hopefully going to get it back on the area of disability. So the world has embraced people with disabilities for the most part. They know what's right. They don't know exactly how to do it, don't know how to include people exactly, but they're committed, government by government, country by country, to including people with disabilities. That to me is an incredible bit of progress that we've made throughout the world. People with disabilities as a distinct consumer group, where marketing is done to people with disabilities, with a variety of disabilities. The inclusion of people with disabilities in the major marketing efforts of companies. Big progress in the last 10 years. Where do I want to go? I could be so glib as to say I would like to see disability become so commonplace that we don't even have to talk about disability as a unique characteristic, that it's accepted because it's so prevalent. But I think disability presents itself new so often to so many families and to so many people that we will have to keep talking about disability to those who are new and to people who understand one part of the disability community but not the broader disability community. People who are suffering with Alzheimer's, or people who are aging with disabilities, who resist the identity of disability. That's where we're going to have to work on the cultural acceptance of people themselves with the identity of disability. There's a very unusual circumstance going on right now where young kids today who've been in the regular school systems, thank goodness to IDEA and other laws, really see themselves as included and accepted but yet different, and they accept this notion of disability culture. People over my age, for example, resist identity of disability very greatly. They think it's still a sign of weakness and that they don't like this at all. We have this spectrum, and I think we're going to age out of it in 20, 30, 40 years, but we still are going to have newness to disability in families. The birth of a child with a disability, they weren't expecting it. It's going to throw them into orbit, and they will land, and they will have lots of resources, we hope, and they'll understand how to help their child appropriately. Over the past 10 years, we've seen programs and services focused on employing people with disabilities begin to be integrated into the generic workforce systems. And sometimes that works really well, and it should in the ideal world, but there are also serious problems about the generic workforce systems understanding the nuances of disability. So in effect, we're saying that we need the X and Y axes of disability. We need generic programs like transportation programs, healthcare programs, education programs, employment programs include people with disabilities as commonplace and as regular. But for people with disabilities who aren't well served by the professionals who are in these because they don't understand all the nuances of disability, I think we're still going to need systems that are unique to the disability community, and we're going to have experts who understand how to help people with disabilities get there. I think we've tried to address intellectual disabilities and people with intellectual disabilities in the workplace. I think we've done a terrible job of it so far, and I would hope in the next 10 years that we would appreciate the contributions that all people can make, including people with intellectual disabilities. I think IQ is a difficult measurement. It's very hierarchical, And I think that it's really the general population and the employer's problem in not appreciating the multiple intelligences that people have and what they offer and how to best tap what they can bring to a workplace. When we can do that, and if we can do that in 10 years, this will be a great day. It might be driven by the economic reality of needing workers and being willing to try new and expand our view of who workers can be and the kind of work that they can do. But hopefully we'll do this in a broader, more equitable way than we've done it in the past 10 years. I think people with disabilities are usually the last in, first out in a cycle of economic success and economic decline. And so people with disabilities probably are disproportionately affected in that way. But what we might be forgetting is that there are an awful lot of people who are already working, who are acquiring disabilities every day. And these are the probably age-related senior executives, senior workers who are acquiring disabilities, and there are not good retention programs in place to address maybe shared jobs, reasonable accommodations for people to keep them in their workplace, fewer hours, better supports and services. We have not done a great job of doing that, but as our workforce ages, I think it is good advice to business to be prepared for this and to think about how we're going to keep the talent that you've already paid for and maximize their ability to work longer per their wishes. And the economic reality is people with disabilities who are working are just like everybody else. They're going to have to work a little bit longer, and retirement's going to be a little bit further out than they thought, and they will want to work. I think we're in challenging times where the various roles that people play, including people with disabilities, sometimes get confused, and we find ourselves arguing amongst ourselves when we should all be pulling together. We create silos of providers versus employers versus consumers versus funders and government agencies. And we tend to chew on each other's legs and whine and complain instead of saying, how do we find the common bonds and how do we work together? Every one of us, all of the groups that you've mentioned, really want to advance people with disabilities. We want to cut off no options. We want to create no limitations in what choices people can make in their lives. And yet we know that we're going to need workers with disabilities. So my thinking is, and I think the smart people around the country, wherever they might be, really should be thinking about how do you create partnerships and maximize the understanding of each other's roles and find the mutual benefits associated with those. That will help all of us.